Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Source Friday. Open Source Friday is a weekly stream that we do on Fridays, hence the name, at 1 p.m. ET, where we chat with open source maintainers or core contributors or developer advocates about different open source projects so that we can get exposure to open source, get inspired, and figure out how we can get into open source as well. Today, I'm joined by Chris and Aaron. So I would love for them to introduce themselves. Hey, Chris and Aaron, what's going on? And I don't know who should go first.
Yeah. I was gonna say we could have gone alphabetical order, and I could have really thrown that off, like not to put you on the spot. But
yeah, that's good. I'll jump in. Yeah. So I'm Chris Hodge. I am the head of community for Label Studio at Hardex. I've been working in open source for a long time. I actually got my start at the University of Oregon. I was building a scientific computing cluster for the College of Arts and Sciences, and this was like when AWS was just brand new and cloud was brand new. It was like all of the big buzz, and we were trying to decide what to install on the system, and there were lots of choices at the time, kind of like new cloud computing infrastructure choices, and through the advice of a good and dear friend of mine, we went with OpenStack, which kind of wound up like being the front runner in the whole cloud infrastructure open source community. That turned into a job supporting OpenStack for the Puppet community at Puppet Labs, which eventually led to a job where I was working for the OpenStack Foundation, kind of like helping drive their initiatives on how to, improve interoperability, improve the developer community, as well as kind of the ecosystem around OpenStack. But I'm trained as a mathematician, like that's how I wound up at the University of Oregon. I've done machine learning in the past, and I went back and worked on the Apache TVM project for a couple of years at OctoML, which was really exciting. It was nice to get back into kind of like that open source machine learning world because it's changed so much in the last few years. And like when I was doing AI, it was like, yeah, this AI thing's never going to take off. And now it's like the only thing that people can talk about. And I've been working on Label Studio since about October of last year. So it's pretty exciting to be working in this space. And, just like to be, I'm really lucky to have such a long career in open source and, to continue to grow that and share something that I'm really passionate about with a broader audience. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
You had a really rich career, and wow. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, please. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
No, yeah, I was just saying you had a really rich career. It sounds really awesome. And I think it's I think the note you made about like you were working on AI back in the some time ago. I don't want to say back in the day. That makes it sound like a long time ago, but some time ago. and now it's kind of like resurfaced and become like this cool thing that everyone wants to do. I think that's interesting because people are like AI is new, and it's like it's not new. It's been around, but like now we're getting to a different stage where people are embracing it, and I think generative AI and LLMs make it easier and more accessible for other developers. But Erin, what about you? Tell me about yourself, and then also people in the audience. I see y'all saying hi. Tell me where you're tuning in from, like which country or state.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Michaela Staples. I'm a senior developer community advocate at Label Studio Hardtext. I did not take a very linear career, so Chris very much had that very linear career. My formal education is in journalism and fandom, so not developer related at all, but I've been accidentally in developer or developer adjacent spaces pretty much almost my entire career on accident. It was not part of the career plan. And then fell into kind of open source when I was at a startup as a product manager, actually, for a headless CMS e-commerce site. And they were like, well, you're running this Discord for the beta testers. You should probably be our open source community manager. And I was like, cool. And then step one was, what does an open source community manager do? And then it was downhill from there. So yeah, I think I came into open source just from the journalism background. We worked a lot with, like, in school, worked a lot with like the Open Journalism Project and had really loved the philosophy of it. My advisor in graduate school actually wrote a lot about the parallels between open source and journalism. So that was Professor Jay Rosen at NYU. So I had really experienced it from the very theoretical academic angle, and then have kind of came along and have been at Label Studio since December. And it was kind of fun to go back to working with data and thinking about those problems. And I think the thing that makes it really exciting is if you would have asked me 5 years ago if I was even end up in the developer space, or 5 years ago I was going to be like a news producer or like a lawyer or something. We'd changed a lot, but I'm glad that we ended up here, and the open source accessibility and machine learning is really exciting to me.
Yes. Also, didn't know there's degrees in fandom, or where you could like specialize in that.
Full things in fandom. So I actually had classes in grad school about fandom and memes, and there is a fan studies academic conference I have attended.
What?
The world out there. I have a friend doing her doctorate on the fandom of Taylor Swift in the pandemic era. Her entire doctorate. It's a very fascinating field if you love pop culture and geeking out. But the thing it's actually really relatable to open source. There's actually a whole study of what open source people can learn from the Sims fandom community. And someone has done an entire academic study on it. It's super fascinating. But that it comes down to like collaboration and accessibility at its core.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. And I think I know a couple other like open source journalist type people who have gone into DevRel, so I definitely see the correlation.
There's a few of us. There's a few of us out there.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us what is your project, right? Like, we've talked about open source, we've talked about AI. What is the name of this project? What does it do?
Yeah, well, so the project is called Label Studio, and it's an open source platform for data labeling. I mean, if we think about there's like the broader machine learning community, like you have things like PyTorch or TensorFlow, or even like more fundamental libraries like NumPy and Pandas. These things that like people use to do data science, they used to do machine learning. And all of this stuff is just like it's kind of helped this explosion of innovation that's happened kind of in the machine learning world. But one piece that was missing was like if you go and you learn machine learning right now, you'll probably like someone will say like, we're going to build a model and we're going to like take all the housing data and we'll like do analysis on the housing data, or we'll take the iris data and we'll do stuff on the iris data, or the handwriting models. But these are all data sets that other people have curated and labeled and kind of built up. And there really weren't any well-maintained and popular platforms for actually taking these data sets and like creating them. And part of the reason is because it's really hard. It's really hard and it's really boring. Like you have to imagine that you have to go through like thousands upon thousands of images or text samples or anything else. And like have an expert go through and decide that, like, yeah, I think that this number is a number 6, this handwriting is a number 6, and this one is a number 5, and like doing that for thousands of data points. So what the founders of Label Studio kind of realized was that we need an open source platform to be able to do this. It needs to be highly configurable because you want to label all different types of data. And it needs to be easy to use, and it needs to have a collaborative interface so that it's like, if I need to get 50 of my best friends together to label a data set, then we would be able to do that. So that's kind of like at a high level what it is. And I think that it looks like Aaron has some things to add too.
I was going to say, the only thing I would add to that is when I will fully admit I'm fairly new to the machine learning world. I've been working in it on like about a year and all that kind of stuff, and had done it before I even realized I was doing machine learning through some sentiment analysis and spreadsheets a few years back. But the way that, like, the analogy that got me to wrap my brain around what data labeling is was very much the computers don't speak English as much as we want them to speak English. We have to tell the computers what something is. And labeling is the process of kind of like translating computer speak and providing context to it. So like, this is a word, or this is a Beyonce song, or this is a song lyric. And giving that allows it to be put into a pattern or a structure for a model or an algorithm, or even just the computer to process.
I think both explanations really did help me to understand, because even when I first saw the title, I was like, Label Studio, what does that have to do with AI? But that makes a lot of sense. Just gonna highlight some comments from the audience. Learner 0418 said, so I guess they're asking clarification. So it makes supervised learning easier. And looks like you're nodding your head. They also, I think, were commenting on when like Erin talked about open journalism. They said that's awesome to hear. And then also just shouting out a couple of people when I asked like where are they tuning in from. People are tuning in from Ethiopia and Iran and Morocco and South Africa and Afghanistan and Colombia. So thanks to y'all for tuning in.
Awesome. I love seeing how international this community is, and it's one of the amazing things about open source is like it opens up so many opportunities for us to collaborate together just throughout the world. Like, and it breaks down barriers in time and space and language. And I just, it's one of the things that, like, having been like worked for the OpenStack Foundation, where like we were an international organization, and it was like we had contributors and from all over the world, and like, going out and meeting everyone. And it's just like, I'm so excited that everyone is here. And like, this is like when I talk about like, why do I do open source and why do I stay in open source? This is a huge reason why I do it, because it's not just about the technology, but it's about the opportunity, and it's about the communities. And so thank you so much, everyone, for being here and participating and being interested. Like, setting aside everything else we're talking about, like, I love seeing this. And thanks, Roselle, for hosting these live streams too.
Of course. And yeah, I echo your sentiments. That's why I always ask people, I'm like, where are y'all tuning in from? Because when I see them say hello, I'm like, oh, okay, they're tuning in from America. But then when they start telling me, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're from everywhere. This is so exciting. But okay, so you all even answered my question on what exactly data labeling is, I guess, unless you have more to add to that. And I also had asked, why is it crucial for AI systems? But I guess you all answered it. I seen Erin go on with me.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so a huge part of why it's so important is if we think about like what machine learning is, in some ways, I just have a giant mathematical model with sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, nowadays billions of parameters. Like, these large language models have billions of parameters that you can turn and that you can tune. And the way we tune those parameters is we put input into the model, and we get output out. And then we ask ourselves, well, how close was the output to what I expected it to be or what I wanted it to be? And data labeling is actually defining what those inputs are. The input might be the image of a cat, and we would expect the output to be, hey, this is a cat. And, and then you feed that into the model. And if it comes out and says, this is a dog, and you say, no, that's the wrong answer. And there are mathematical steps that you can go through to go back and tune all those parameters. And so having properly labeled data means that as you're tuning this model, and as you're trying to bring it into a spot where it's giving you always the wrong answer to the right answer 99% of the time, like, the only way you can do that is if the data you're feeding into the model is accurately labeled, and that's why it's just such a critical step to be able to make it to work. And these models require a ton of data to turn them into random number generators, which is usually how they start out, and turning them into things that are very accurate in making predictions.
Interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, and then someone asked clarification. The expectations and inputs are your labels, right?
Yeah,
Can be.
It's a complicated question.
I feel like it's context dependent. That's a good way to say it. To answer the stereotypical developer advocate answer, it depends.
Okay. That's completely fair. And I'm sure we'll see it in the demo. I just have one other question before we go into the demo, is what inspired y'all to get involved in this particular project? I think maybe from Chris's point of view, I could assume it's because he's had this long career in AI and open source. But yeah, just curious from both of your point of views, especially since Erin, you have less of a developer background, and like, I'm particularly scared of math. So just curious, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was very fortunate to kind of take a break between jobs in my last career, or like the last job that I had was very fortunate. And I think the things that really drew me to the machine learning world were two points. Is like, one, I'm a nerd at heart. It comes with the glasses. I love the academic world, and I was really fascinated by the amount of academics in machine learning. Like, it was just like a lot of people in machine learning they just genuinely enjoy learning for the sake of learning. And they genuinely enjoy like this discovery and the new things out there. I actually did love math. I actually hated science in school because I didn't want to write a lab report. So I learned in my undergrad, if you were a liberal arts major, you could skip your science credits if you took physics. So I actually was probably the only journalism student to pass Calc 3 in like 2 physics classes, because I didn't want to write lab reports. So don't ask me about biology, but I enjoyed that. And so that was kind of like a draw there. And then it was really important to me to be at an open source company. And that was super important. And like, it kind of fell in, like, Lauren, who's the VP of marketing at Label Studio, had reached out to me. And at first, I will be totally honest, I was kind of like, I don't know if machine learning is quite my jam. Like, it's not really my thing. And then I started exploring and playing around with it, and was really excited about, the amount of research going into it. A lot of it is open source, which is really cool. And we are learning new things in this industry literally every day, which I think is, for me, it's like no 2 days are the same, and there's always a new problem. And it's fun to be able to go learn down those rabbit holes. Like, and I didn't want to write Ruby. That was the other thing.
Also, I should change or rephrase the way that I said the question, because it sounds like I'm like, oh, you're not good at math. Like, I just assumed, but I meant to say I'm interested in AI, but I'm scared of it because I'm not good at math. So I was like interested in you sound like you're a beast at math. So I'm like,
and it's like, I want to clarify, like, math here, I think you don't need to be like, oh, I've taken all these math classes. I think it comes more from the background of like the logic flow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, it's a much more, it's like if you like puzzles and like your brain likes that kind of things, which I think most developers tend to like.
Yeah.
And I think now that I'm going back into, it's like in my last job, I was dabbling with like Ruby or like doing some Python stuff, but it was like more JavaScript stuff, and a lot of like API calls. And going into this, like, I don't see myself doing that kind of work as much, but it is very focused on, how do you understand data, and what does data actually mean? Which does have a more like logistics flow to it. Because I think there's that whole thing with analytics. Like in analytics, we can all make up a number and it's like, this is the best number in the world. And it's like, but without context, that number can mean absolutely anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
well, and there's something kind of important too about like Label Studio as like the concept, like the concept of coming to the concept of open data. Like, let's look at the two biggest open source platforms for machine learning right now. We have TensorFlow, which was developed by Google and is kind of like the older one, and is like, it's received a lot of adoption, and it really kind of kicked off this era of exploring deep learning in an open way, right? This is amazing, like open source given away by one of the biggest companies in the world, and then we have PyTorch, which is kind of like the new kid on the block, and it's kind of the new hotness, and a lot of new development is happening there. It's part of the Linux Foundation now. That came out of Facebook, another huge company. And it's like, why are these companies giving away this core technology? Why are they just giving it away? And and it's in part because like having that platform for the open development of these algorithms benefits everybody. Like anybody at this point, like you don't need to know anything about machine learning. You can go and engage with these models and ask them questions and get answers back. And people are building APIs for us to interact with them. And it's an incredible time to be someone who is like a practitioner of AI, in the sense that like you're using AI to get work done. Like it's never been a better time to do this. But is Google giving away all their data that they're using to train Bard, or is OpenAI giving away all of the data that they're using to train ChatGPT? And it's because there's like a huge amount of value that's locked up in the data, and oftentimes it's treated as very secret and very proprietary. And working for a company that is building an open data labeling platform with the goal of being able to share and collaborate data means that we're helping to drive towards a more open data world where we can share data sets with one another. And I, and Laura in the chat brought up a great point of like, do we like practice data sheets for data sets like Hugging Face? Like Hugging Face is a great example of where does your data come from? What's the provenance behind it? What are the biases that are inside of it? And Label Studio doesn't necessarily like, produce targeted sheets like that, but it allows you to create these open data sets and share exactly everything that's in the data set and how it was labeled and who labeled it, and really build that deep provenance of like, what is the data that you're working with and how can you share it with others?
Love that. Thank you. And then Erin also put, if you're a geek about public transparency and open data, you'll likely love machine learning. The rabbit hole I went down was amazing. All right, so loved all these answers. Love the understanding of like what the project is and why you all got involved. I think it's a great time to pivot to the actual demo so we can get a chance to see like how it's working under the hood, or just how we can leverage it ourselves. And putting it up.
So I actually just dropped this here. This is our project. If you would like to kind of follow along, drop us a star. I'll also drop it in the chat. So it is there. This is the current project, but you can deploy this on Docker or on Kubernetes or run it locally. But to make things easier, we actually do have a Hugging Face space. So we'll be launching it from there today. And the cool thing is like Hugging Face is kind of like a giant place where there's a bunch of models open that you can go ahead and play with without having to download a tool or a container like tool like Docker. And it's also pretty open access. So for today's example, we'll just be operating within our Hugging Face space. And I'm dropping that in the chat as well. And Maddie Two Shoes, I agree. This is very, very cool. I think the Hugging Face spaces thing was like a huge, discovering this was like a huge unblock for me and like learning a lot about it. But again, would love to see you on there. But we're going to go ahead and click in the spaces. We also do have some sample data sets that go along with our tutorials. So if you do check out our tutorials on our website, it does tell you like how to get started with data labeling and why it's important and what space does this actually fit in the machine learning process. So go ahead and check it out. In the meantime, I'm just going to open up this Hugging Face space. And it'll give you a little warning like, hey, this does get reset. Sometimes I've opened up this Hugging Face space and it has like 30 projects. Consider this like everybody can edit a Google Doc in here. So someone can come in and actually delete it all. So if you are using it, you can fork it like GitHub. But for the sake of today, I'm kind of like, you know what, let's edit in this fun little Google Doc platform. Oh, and yes, I can zoom a little for you. There you go. Let me know if that's good. So I'm going to go here. You can see I've started to play around with these cool Beyonce data sets. I'm really official with my title naming, but Rizal and I were talking about Beyonce before the stream. So naturally, I had to find a great data set. If you are interested, I don't believe in boring learning tutorials, but I do have a list here of pop culture data sets that I have actually been practicing machine learning on. And it's just feel free to add if you find a cool one, but there are some things like boy bands in there as well. So we'll create a new project, and a project in Label Studio is kind of just your way of creating a window for a portion for your data to label. So the data set that I've already got downloaded on my computer is the Beyonce concert performances data set. So we can look at Beyonce data set, and Maddie Two Shoes, I am here for the good pun. You could say your data is in sync. Damn, I'm almost wishing I would have got the boy band data set now. I've named my project. I'm going to go ahead and import it. If you have it in a database, you can use a URL or on AWS. But for the sake of this, we're going to use the really easy CSV upload. So I'm just simply uploading a CSV. And then it's going to ask me if I want to do this as a list of tasks or time series or whole data. For this case, a list of tasks, just each task is an item that needs to be labeled. Where time series or whole data, Label Studio works with a bunch of different data types. So, and now that we have generative models, we have people who are using this for images and like annotating parts of the image. We have people using this for video. We have people using this for audio. You can build things like training things for better podcast transcription. So what a company would do if you were using this for an enterprise-based tool is like, I think of, I was editing video last night for, you know, myself, like a personal side project. And I use a tool that helps me put transcripts on my video at the bottom. That has to be trained by an algorithm, and that has to be trained and decided. Your like computer doesn't naturally know, like when Aaron says this sentence, this is what it means in text. Someone has to go through and label parts of audio data, like this is what the word the looks like, or this is what different speech sounds like. And it's really interesting because we think about this often through a very American first lens, which is kind of a just not very cool thing we should do. But different accents actually don't recognize this well. Or there's a lot of projects out there that are trying to label different languages because we often, unfortunately, do think English first many of the times, but that's not really fair or equitable. Insert why open source is important here. But anywho, for the sake of this data set, we're going to click list of tasks. And then we'll click save. Oh, and I already, look, so I went ahead and imported it here. I skipped a step. So I want to go in and just change the settings. So Label Studio is extremely customizable. And you can change your interface based on different use cases. So we already have a bunch of templates already designed. So you can see here all the different ways that you can label data. So you can have anything from selecting semantic segmentation of polygons. You can do bounding boxes for image labeling. And computer vision kind of just means like image labeling. You're teaching the computers how to see. You have natural language processing. So you can do things like, if you're building a chatbot, you might use question answering, or sentiment analysis, you might do a text classification thing. And then each of these are completely customizable. We also have generative AI ones. So if you are building, this is actually part of our 1.8 release. So literally came out last week, brand new stuff. But if you want to retrain GPT-2 or GPT-4 or any of our larger, like those larger models out here, here's how you would do so. And there's a ton of tutorials. We have a repo on how you can start to retrain them on our GitHub. But for the sake of this demo, just being mindful of time, I think we'll just do a simple text classification here. And we'll customize this template. So this typically is used for like sentiment analysis. I'm actually going to use it to rank the awesomeness of Beyonce songs because I think that would be pretty fun. So I'm going to click song title. We have 3 choices: positive, negative, and neutral. I think I'm going to change those to great song. And I'm just going to click add. Terrible song.
Well, I see a
Overrated.
problem in your labeling setup right now.
Oh, what did I do now?
Well, Beyonce doesn't have any terrible songs.
Oh,
Oh,
that's I love that.
that's a great one. Overrated song, underrated song. I like it.
Love
I
that,
appreciate
Chris. Yeah.
Underrated song. Underrated song. I'm over here like being particular. So our data set is naturally going to be biased because I can assume that we're all Beyonce fans. And just like when we talk about bias, that's how easy it is to inject bias in AI. So actually, thanks for bringing it up. We are all Beyonce fans. We would probably never give Beyonce a terrible rating. But say I handed this data set to someone who was like, I absolutely hate Beyonce. Or, and this is also why, and like, again, I mentioned early on in this stream that I have a liberal arts background. That's, I actually think, more important than ever in machine learning. Like, and so if you are not technical or you're coming from a liberal arts background, I think it's super important right now that you are curious about machine learning because context is so important. If you've ever designed a survey, you know how easy it is to bias a survey. The difference is like, we can, if annotators, because sometimes this is outsourced, annotation is outsourced or labeling is outsourced. If you outsource it to a team that isn't provided the context of why you're labeling it, like for the sake of today, we could just be simply creating a log of like Chris, Aaron, and Rozelle's favorite Beyonce songs. But if we were to outsource this to someone, again, without that context, we might be missing things. If you want to, and then kind of back to the Label Studio side of things, we do have an XML file here if you want to further customize it. And this will give you, you can change things like add context, you can add pop-ups, you can go completely wild if you want to take the time to do that. I am constantly amazed of what people are doing in this area. So I'm always, if you're building something cool. Additionally, if you've decided that, I want to like do more with my labeling or set up things like adding a model so you can do predictions or help with like assisted labeling, you can do that as well. So meaning like assisted labeling is like do like I'll do 100 and then like that model trains, understands like how you rated that and then tries to predict it in the future. So again, clicking save and we can see our basic task view. So you'll see I'll have an ID if the task has been completed or not. This would be if it has total annotations per task, if you skip the annotation, or total prediction. So if we had a model added here, it'll also have a nice little annotated by, which will have my name here, a song title or item title, and we can customize these depending on how it goes. And this data set has 642 Beyonce performances out there. So we can go ahead from here, we can start labeling. And it's giving me an undefined title or album title. So first one, we can see it is important to pre-process your data set rather than just download random data sets off the internet. So I'm going to head ahead and skip that one. And
what do you mean by
wondering,
process? Sorry.
What?
What do you mean by pre-process?
So pre-processing will come from the, there we go. Let's see if it'll pop up here. It's like cleaning up the data beforehand. So like this is a CSV data. If you have like missing areas in your CSV, it'll actually do what it's doing now and give me that undefined title.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm getting an undefined. We'll see what if it pops up here.
I'm wondering if it might be the special character, but no, it's all there.
Yeah. This is what happens when you pull a random data set off the internet. So I will have to kind of play around with that because you can see where I'm getting like a.
So, but this is actually, we can go back into the labeling interface configuration and let's take a look at the the code, because not only is there a visual editor in Label Studio, but there's actually an XML type markup language that allows you to define what it is that you want what you want this interface to look like.
And so it's giving me a choice value, and then it's giving me, here's that data text where it's pulling up. So it is trying to pull, it says text, and then the value is that song title and album title here. And then we'll see where it's surfacing.
Yeah, I'm worried that the I'm worried that backslash in the data set might be confusing the labeling interface.
Gotcha. Oh, I see. I actually do have another Beyonce data set that I have pulled up.
Okay.
So for the sake of this, we can actually creep in here. Oh, it's doing the same thing, but this one does have albums, so we can rank it by albums.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a backslash. I'm going to go ahead here, just kind of quickly speed run our last section. I'm going to do this by, instead of spelling item / album title, that's a good call. We're just going to go straight from album.
Okay.
And then do awesome, overrated, underrated. That's going to be our labels. Again, very just quick labeling here. And this is actually just another things. It should be pulling up from that album text. We'll go ahead and click save. And then we'll start labeling. And so it says Austin Powers in gold members. So this is the album that it's from, meaning it's probably on a soundtrack. I'm just going to put soundtrack. You might be like slightly overrated because it's based on the movie, not necessarily the album itself. And then I'd click submit. Dangerously in Love. Feel like it was a good album.
Yeah.
Awesome. Universally awesome. Fighting Temptations. I feel like this is another movie. I don't remember this one.
Yeah, it is a movie. You could put
maybe. I'm going to keep the movie trend of overrated. Yeah. Again, awesome. And this data set, I think, is based off of just like chart toppers. So these are already all winning movies or award-winning things that Beyonce has been on. So we could be sitting here forever and seeing a bunch. But I'm just kind of quickly running through. They also have keyboard shortcuts. If you see those little 1, 2, and 3, if I was like, I want to power through this, you can do this all based off of your thing. But again, we're just kind of going through. I'm going to just randomly click now. And you'll see it's going to start having the annotations here. So we can go ahead and refresh and we'll start seeing those annotations pop up when it's been completed, who it's been completed by, which is, my very official email right there that I made in 10 seconds.
Yeah. Well, and actually we can like, so I could actually jump in and I could log in as another user at this point, or anybody at this point, because this is like an open, this is an open space, and you could go and create an account and start labeling on this. But you could log in and immediately just start like labeling things yourself too, and like kind of like build a crowdsourced, collectively developed open Beyonce data set.
And so you can start to even like filter by like type of label or different things, but this allows you to kind of get everything ready for if we were to build a Beyonce based model.
Okay, this makes so much sense. Okay, because I've been playing around a little bit with like building different applications with AI, and I've been like, I don't understand exactly how I fine tune the data, or do I really have to sit here and like specify each thing? This, now that I'm seeing it live, I'm like, this is what I need. Like, I just need to be able to label it and be like, this is a good example. This is a bad example. Love it.
So that's what you can do that. And if you're wanting to do some more advanced stuff, Nikolai, who's our CTO and co-founder, and I went to PyData Berlin, and we actually did talk about RLHF. So if you're like, Aaron, what the heck is RLHF yet? Which is basically just retuning or fine-tuning models. So this is taking GPT-2, and it shows how to use Label Studio to help fine-tune a large model. So where labeling fits in with this generative AI and like large generative model or foundational model perspective is these models are so big that first you have to have labelers to actually create the initial model. But the value is like, you don't want to have to teach a computer to learn English again. Like, we've already done that. There's someone out there who's already tackled that step. You're just wanting to make sure that you're reducing bias or improving context. So the one case that you can go through is like, not every answer is the best answer. So we do have a ranking template in Label Studio, and there is so I can actually go show you what that would look like, where you can start to rank items. Now, this data set isn't necessarily set up to create new items or do ranking, but we can show you what it would look like if you had a data set here. And the ranking template, it's going to say, we don't have that.
Yeah.
Template.
Well, and I think this is a great time to jump into and like, kind of like talk about like, if you see like, if you kind of go through the templates on the left there, like we have computer vision templates so that you can like bring in image data and start, doing segmentation analysis on that, bounding box analysis on it, natural language processing, which is kind of like the sentiment analysis, audio and speech processing. So you can load like audio data sets. Like we have a bunch of users who like, are interested in like improving call center experience. And they just have like lots and lots and lots of audio data. And it's just like annotators go through and they say that like, the person is happy here. The person is unhappy here. They're asking a question about this, and helping it to like, build better systems for kind of like helping people out. Time series analysis of like, we have a company out in France that is like, they have a whole bunch of devices that are out in the field, and they want to be able to predict when those devices fail. And there's just all of this telemetry that comes out of it, like temperature, CPU load, motion, and then they stream this data back in, and it's all just time series data of events that are happening. And they were able to build out like all of these. It was called total energies, and they were able to build out like all of these models to be able to predict like, oh, we have hardware out in the field that's going to fail, and it's because they were able to build time series analysis data sets and then build predictive models off of those data sets. So pretty much any sort of data that you can imagine that you want to use, we have a template to work on it, and we're able to like import it and actually like do the data labeling on that. It's really super cool. And we also have a playground where you can like, without bringing up Label Studio, you can go and you can just like try out different labeling interfaces too, and say that like, hey, I want to try out something super complicated. And you can just go and like try things out. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you on the things that you were doing.
Oh no, you're all good. I was like, I was going to say that's actually perfect. So, like I still forget all the different things that we have, but yeah, if you want to kind of get started and start like exploring, here's a great way to do so. The Hugging Face space is another great way to do so. And if you're interested in just like learning more about machine learning, the two places that actually were the most helpful for me were actually Hugging Face has a great Discord where they do really, really awesome like tutorials and like workshops together, and they have all their assets async, and they have one thing I love about them is their transparency, commitment to open source, and like just ethics behind it. They have really great ethicists at that team. And the other place is actually Bloomberg's open source repo. Like the Bloomberg machine learning and data team is doing some amazing things and teaching other people there in public. I was at PyCon and literally fangirled over them, and this poor person was like, oh my goodness, you have the best repo. I taught myself so much off of your repo. And then the guy was like, I didn't build that. And so I'm sorry, random person. But I did meet the people who are building it. I'm sorry to the salesperson. I talked their ear off and was like, this is the best thing ever. And they were like, okay, weirdo, go sit back in your template.
But speaking of resources for learning, Erin, I think Erin's being a bit too modest because if you want to get started with Label Studio, like if you're looking at this and you're like, I want to understand more and I want to get started on this, Erin's actually written a tutorial called 0 to 1 with Label Studio that tells you how to actually start, like set up your first project and start labeling data, and how to like import the data, how to export it, kind of how to do the data cleaning. And then we have another tutorial that follows up on that, because like, as we said before, like data labeling can be like super boring. Like who wants to go and like, if it's easy to like determine the sentiment on a thing, and like if someone like, you may have models that like do sentiment analysis, right? And we've kind of like lifted ourselves up where we're using old models to build better models. Label Studio also has a machine learning plugin system where you can plug in systems and it will go through and just like do a pre-pass on all of your data and just like make a best guess as to where everything is with prediction values, so that it's like machine learning model may say to like, I'm not so sure if someone says, I'd love to hate this movie, right? It may be like, I can't tell if I like this or don't like this. It'll give the scores back to you. So then your annotation team can go and say that like, oh, let's do all of the stuff with the low scores first, so that we get the hard data out of the way, and then the easy stuff can just be pre-labeled by the machine learning model, and you've actually cut down the work that you have to do by sometimes orders of magnitude.
Wow.
So we have a follow-up tutorial which is just about how to plug in machine learning systems and how to kind of make those predictions.
Wow.
But
I
Erin's
love
tutorial
it.
is amazing. Oh yeah, sorry, I
I was
talked
just
over
gonna
you
say,
there.
I just went and dumped all of them in the chat. And so if you're curious and you want to get started, there's a lot of great stuff there. You can find me all over the internet. I'm probably way too online and should turn off the internet more often than I do, but I'm happy to help you out. We also have the Label Studio Slack community, so that you're welcome to join as well, which is super fun.
Awesome. I'll definitely look into that blog post and all those other links, and I'll try to like resurface them again when like near the end of the stream. Okay, so we have a couple of questions. I'm gonna, if you see me look away, for some reason we got like disconnected from LinkedIn, not the actual video, but the comments, which was really weird. But so I'll be like going back and forth from the tabs. But we have a couple of questions. The first one is, and I think you all might have like mentioned this, but just to reiterate, does Label Studio practice data sheets for data sets like Hugging Face?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that like you would have to set. So when you label an entire data set, and you export that data set for use in a machine learning model or to share with other people, the things that you're going to get out of that are like links to the original data. And so like what is the original data? Like, you'll probably be storing like your images like somewhere on the web or inside of an S3 bucket or Google Cloud storage. So you'll get links to that original data, and then you'll get a lot of metadata about what the annotation was and who the annotators were and those sorts of things. And so you have like that long, rich provenance, but there's really no facility to kind of generate that more human readable, like, this is where the data came from, this is the bias, these are the sorts of things. And so, when you do that export and you publish the data set, you would kind of be responsible for building your own data sheet for that.
Perfect. Thank you. Other questions that I saw come in, well, mostly were around on LinkedIn. A lot of people are saying, how do I get involved in this project? And I also seen Learner 0418 ask that as well. On like, they want to get involved. They want to maybe contribute or something like that. How do they do that?
Yeah, I mean, join our Slack community. It's a great place to start and kind of engage with other members of the community. If you want to download the source code and try it, it's all on GitHub. You can just download the Label Studio project. We have lots of getting started links to just run the software and get involved. You can also contribute. If you find that now Label Studio is run mainly by a core team that works for HeartX, but we do accept outside contributions. And one of the best and easiest ways to get involved is if you have machine learning models that you want to be able to do predictive analysis with, or you want to do cool things with. Like, we had a community member who went and built an interface to segment anything, so that if you want to like label a data set of just like, I just need to label like tens of thousands of dogs, different types of dogs, you can like click in the interface and it'll just flood fill and like, this is a dog, I'm labeling it. And send that label back to you. And they were like, they were talking about how, for the project that they were working on, it sped up their annotation process by somewhere between like 10 and 100 fold by being able to, like I said, and this is just a machine learning model that like plugs in through our regular interfaces. So there are tons of ways to get involved, and we love to see people join the community and just kind of like, just engage with what we're doing.
I love it. So, go ahead, Erin.
I was just gonna say on the contribution side, we do have some pretty exciting contributions. The one that I am most recently like geeking out about is the Segment Anything, which was completely contributed by, and I think Roselle, you'll geek out on this as well, by a college student who was not wanting to study for their finals. So like built this entire integration for an internship because he's avoiding studying for finals, which I was like, this is super cool. But from an open source, and like why I love this, again, comes with the glasses. I'm a huge learner, education nerd. And the fact that like they built this because they just were like, this is a really cool thing and I'd love this to integrate. And it was really fun to work with them as a community team to build this integration and like also teach them how to be a contributor for the first time. Because this is like the first major contribution they've built, which is super cool.
That's awesome. Great use of procrastination. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh yeah, no, I feel like I feel like I keep talking over you, Rizal. So I'm so sorry about that too. Like that's, I get excited.
You're the guest. You should be speaking. So.
But yeah, and not only that, but like this has been like one of the like when this patch started coming in, and it was like people from all over the community was like, when is this thing going to merge? Like, I have to have this thing. Like, I absolutely need it. And this wasn't like the core community. This is just a college student like, hey, this is going to be cool and it's going to help me in my research. Like, it's just so amazing.
This is awesome. No, I'm like mad excited about this product. I didn't even know it was this cool. I think someone asked, I think Erin also answered, but I'll just say it out loud for people. Someone asked, like, I want to label, I want to do label data, or I want to label data for sentiment analysis, but the data is in an Indonesian language. Can Label Studio do that? Looks like Erin said yes, like resounding yes. Okay, so we learned a lot about how this tool works, how people could get involved. I think maybe I should resurface some of the links that you all showed, and then I'll ask you all some of the wrap-up non-technical questions, because somehow this was already 50 minutes, but it didn't feel like it. Like just listening to like Chris and Erin just like, you know, talk, like you all are passionate about this. So it made it really exciting. Okay, so some of the links that we starred, I think people were asking like how to get involved and stuff like that. Looks like I remember huggingface.co/label studio was one of the first things that you showed. So I don't remember why you showed that though, if you wanted to clarify.
Yeah, so that's how like the Hugging Face space. And if it's easier, Rizal, I can just go back and reply to the tweet and the LinkedIn post with all the links. I've actually been taking a list down myself during this event. So, but that's like if you don't want to install it via Docker, or that 0 to 1 tutorial does get you started using Docker. I'm a Docker fangirl, so much so that I had to close out of a Docker container before I started the stream, and because I was wondering why my computer was running so slow. And so, but if you are like, I don't even want to deal with that, Hugging Face makes it easier to just get it all started right within the browser.
Gotcha. That's what it was for. And I welcome definitely the summary of different links, but we have it on so many different platforms. So just want to make sure that everybody, because I think I have it on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, everything. So just like a double check. I remember you also said the RLHF repository was if you wanted to like figure out how to refine or fine tune specific data models. So like if you had a really large data model like GPT-2 or something like that, you can use this for people. There was a couple of blog posts. Maybe we should, because there is a lot of like links there. The playground to try things out, y'all. The blog post on 0 to 100 to getting started with Label Studio, which Chris and Erin wrote, but Chris is like saying it's amazing, it's really great. I'm definitely going to check it out. And then the awesome pop culture data, if you all wanted to check out that particular, like I think that was what we used as the demo today. If you wanted to check that out as well. And if you want to join the Slack, there's this link as well. Feel free to rewatch the video. I know I went through some of the links really quickly, and if Erin like adds those in the show notes. Okay. Next thing I want to switch into, since there's only 53 minutes left, I guess I'll there's so much questions I still have. I want to try it out. I think I'm gonna try it out after this stream. But let me see, just really quickly. I think the only thing before I went into some of the like non-technical questions is just like more of y'all's thoughts on like AI. Like, what are your predictions for the future of like generative AI or LLMs? I there are some people who are like, you know, this is just a fad, this is just a trend, but then there are some people that are like saying this is pivotal to the tech industry. So I'm curious, what are y'all's thoughts on that?
I mean, I was a skeptic at first. Even like my first interview, I was like, I don't know, I can't really do this. This is gonna go away. And then now I'm like, really, like, this is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, the models are incredibly powerful. Like we haven't seen models that can do things like they're doing right now. Like you can go and you can ask open-ended questions and they get them mostly right. Sometimes they get them wrong. Sometimes they get them horribly wrong. But like if we think about like what was one of the biggest innovations like kind of in the tech space, it was a text box back when Google came out, and it was like, how does search get better? Like search on the internet is awful. We have giant indexes, and search is terrible. And then like Google was just like, we're just gonna give you a little text box, and you type in what things that you want to get back out, and you get back magic of just like knowledge. And this is the exact same thing that's happening right now. You get little text boxes, you type in the things that you're interested in, and you kind of get back, what a lot of people are considering to be magic. But also understanding the limitations that these aren't thinking machines. They aren't, they still heavily depend upon making sure that the data we put into them is the best data possible, which means that it's safe, it's not biased, it's truthful, and that can't be done automatically. That actually takes a lot of attention to detail, right? And there's always going to be a space for making sure the data we put into these things is correct. But kind of the other big shift that I'm seeing is ML is accessible to everybody now. And I think that is like the most important outcome that's coming out of this is like anybody can now go and effectively use these models and retrain these models and engage with these models without having to have a PhD in high-level mathematics. And that's the real exciting thing that I think is happening, that there's so much openness and so much availability for kind of everybody to participate now.
Yeah, I love that. I think the point you made about it being more accessible, and then also about it not being, they don't actually know things, right? Like an LLM, like gathering from like what y'all have said and my use with like GitHub Copilot, it's just a statistical probability machine. It's just like it's autocomplete almost, but like at a larger scale. So I think that was a good note. And then Erin wrote, data labeling and processing is probably going to be essential for the future in combination with keeping this open source if we want to make this an ethical field with integrity. Love that. And I think that goes into my next question before the non-technical. I just really wanted to know y'all's answer to this. So sorry, I hope we don't go over time too much. But is like, why do you all feel that open source is key to machine learning and AI? I think you all kind of went through it a little bit in the beginning, especially with Erin's background in like open journalism and Chris's background in open source and AI. But yeah.
And again, like this was a huge consideration when I wanted to get into this, but I really think like open source is super essential. So a lot of these models were actually built because of open data. And for those of you who aren't familiar what open data is, it was actually a government initiative put on by the Obama administration to increase transparency in government. This is where my journalism geek hat comes out a little bit. There are open data weeks. And
oh no, you froze and you're sounding like you're going to say something amazing.
Oh no, we lost you, Erin. Oh,
I'll be but
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I am. Well, Erin is frozen. Sorry,
right.
Sorry, Erin.
Maybe
she's back.
Here we go. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
It started thunderstorming outside my house, so that is likely my internet. We love it, but so open data. I don't know where I was at when I got cut off, but open data was actually part of a government initiative in the U.S. designed by the Obama administration to increase transparency in our government issues. So basically there was funds and initiatives created to just make our government projects a little more accessible. And a lot of this has been maintained over the years, but much like many open source projects, the funding hasn't really been there in recent years, as well as this has not been as much of an initiative. But what this has to do with the field of open source and machine learning is that's how so many researchers and academics and technologists had built these early models, is because of these open access data sets. And they built them by collaborating with one another or building off of each other's model and documenting the work that they do. A lot of this is done in Python. So you're using a notebook. And if you've never like used a Python notebook before, one of the things that's really great is they have like footnotes of each, like what this thing does, like what these lines of code do. So it provides context, and a really good Python notebook is amazing because you can almost follow someone's step and like see what they were thinking. But by putting those in the open, you can actually learn from one another, and it allows for advancement of the total field, but also it allows for, if there is bias, we can see it because everybody has their own biases. In the case of Beyonce fans, we would be the worst, most biased group here to label Beyonce data sets because everything would be amazing. But on that flip side, just putting it in the open and admitting the bias is the important part.
Love that. What about you, Chris?
I mean, I think that like what Erin is talking about is like is important, but even just like the openness of like openness elevates everybody, and having, if you go to Kaggle, if you go to Hugging Face, there are all these open data sets. You can find like the large image open data sets. It's called Lion, which has like 10 terabyte data set that allows you to just like go and like bring images into your training and like like have a shared data set that you're working with with others. And it's so much about creating opportunity and creating innovation for anybody to participate, and like and doing so in a way that also is like make sure that like you're not creating models and you're not using data sets that have harm in them, or if there is harm there, that you can identify it and you can adjust your models to remove it, or to just identify and acknowledge it. So there's that, to me, that's the most important thing that comes out of like everything open, whether it be open data, open source, is creating opportunities for others so that we're all kind of like elevating one another rather than like clutching onto our knowledge and then like and not sharing it. Like I don't know, that's kind of like my like, this is why I love open source and this is why I do this thing, but I just so strongly believe in it. Like it's such an important thing to me.
Yeah, I love that about tech overall. I think in our industry we're a little bit, we might be a little bit more willing to share things than other industries. Like like we'll be like, oh yeah, like here's this piece of code, like, or a code snippet, like Stack Overflow and all that. Whereas like maybe some other industries are a little bit less willing to share things like that. Okay, we reached the hour mark. I forced it with all these questions quickly with I just had a lot of questions. So I'll quickly do like the non-technical. What's the first programming language you all learned?
Oh,
I was gonna say it was MySpace templates, and LiveJournal templates. So it's like CSS and whatever I needed because I was a Sims 2 custom content creator. Wow, flashback. And
Oh, wow.
I don't even remember what that was to customize your profile. And then I think the only like actual like work in the work world I did Liquid was like the first one. Shopify.
So this is going to be like, this is going to date me. This is going to be like, how old are you without saying how old you are? My very first program was 10 print hello, 20 go to 10 in BASIC on an Apple II Plus. And that was the first computer program I ever wrote. And it was mind blowing to me. I can make this thing say hello over and over and over again.
Cool that you remember it like that, like just learning that. Yeah. I think I learned MySpace. I learned SQL for some reason. I was like, oh, I'm going to learn how to code. And then I learned SQL. And I was like, what does this have to do with coding? I wasn't sure. But okay. If money wasn't an issue, how would y'all ideally spend your time? Whether it's job-wise or not job-wise.
This is like a really hard question because I don't know. I feel like I would just work. I would still probably work. I like what I do. Probably like half day, and then I'd probably just like go to school, maybe learn something, sign up for a bunch of random classes.
Yeah, you said you're a learner at heart. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a
I
library.
mean, you can tell behind me, like there's a bunch of instruments behind me. I would get better at all of those. Like if time and money weren't an issue too. But but I do think that that they're like they're like giving back is so important also, and like before the pandemic, like I made it a point to like go and pack food at the food bank once a week, and doing more of that is like also like, boy, if you didn't have to worry about anything in the world, like, well, then help other people who do have things to worry about. I think is like a super important thing too.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Like, using your privilege to help others. I love that. Okay, what's a dream open source project that you would like to create one day? I know that maybe Label Studios like your dream, but your other dream.
Oh, that's a really hard question.
I was like, I think I'm actually, this is what I'm giving at Strange Loop is law on open data, but I think I would really be interested in supporting more open data projects. So like I have contributed to like the city.nyc, which is a local nonprofit newsroom committed to making sure that every New Yorker has fair, equitable, and access to information. So they have 0 paywalls. Also like organizations like the Marshall Project, which makes sure that we do accountability journalism on incarceration. So doing open data projects would probably be my time.
That's lit. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it already kind of exists, but I would love to see it like to give even more time and attention to it. Is there's an open source project called Processing, which is an art platform. Like it's a platform for creating audio and visual, first inside of like little Java applet things. Now there's like they've moved into like being able to produce it in JavaScript, but like really diving into that and just making like building that out more is kind of like I was engaged in that project a while ago, and I wrote a bunch of different art projects off of that, and I would just like being able to go back to that and just like devote full-time energy to it would just be kind of a dream for me, just because it was so important to me in my formative years, and it's would love to see it continue and like help other people along and like be creative with programming and open source.
That sounds like a really cool project. Okay, next question. Very important question. Do you say GIF or GIF?
GIF. GIF is peanut butter.
GIF.
Y'all would hate me. I say GIF. Okay. And now,
I support your peanut butter enthusiasm.
Honoring the founder, like
exactly.
Yeah.
You said it was GIF.
It's hard to argue with that.
Okay. And then now this is the most important question of the day. What's your favorite Beyonce song?
Oh,
The Flawless Remix with Kendrick Lamar.
Okay, that's a good one.
Okay, now is it
runner-up would be Countdown because that's underrated.
What was the runner-up?
The runner-up would be Countdown because it's an underrated one.
Countdown, yes.
So
I'm thinking of it in my head.
So can I does it have like can I go back to TL? Can I go back to TLC?
Destiny's Child?
Yeah. Scrub. I mean, it's the song we sing around the house the most is Scrubs.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Very
I
works.
don't want.
I was like, that's a good one. Like, I'm also
Yeah.
like being like, what? I'm not even gonna lie. I was a Spice Girls over Destiny's Child person, so
That works, y'all. Okay. Let me see if anybody else has any questions in the comments. No more questions. Okay, cool. But I had a really great time with y'all. I'm sorry, like I know we went 10 minutes over, and you all probably have like very busy days left ahead of you. So I'm very sorry. I was just really interested in this conversation. Chris, did you freeze? Just so you know. Okay, no, you didn't. Cool.
No. I'm sorry.
But thank y'all so much for coming through and sharing your knowledge, like both of you all's perspectives on like open data and AI and machine learning. It was really an enriching conversation for me, and I think it was for the audience. I also want to say thanks for the audience too, for like, you know, always every time I do a stream, they're like tapping in, they got things to say, they have good questions, and I really appreciate that as well. I hope to see y'all next week, or for Open Source Friday next week. We have another exciting, interesting session. And then Chris and Erin, is there any last things you wanted to say, any things you wanted to promote, like maybe you're speaking at an event, or like I know we had a whole bunch of links up. Let me just put some of them up just for people to see. But is there any like last things you wanted to drop and promote?
I think don't be a stranger. Like if you need anything, definitely reach out and drop us a star on the Label Studio repo if that's your jam. Let's try to get to 20K this year. I feel like we could do that by like September, by my half birthday. Like I'm manifesting that by my half birthday.
For your Twitter followers, for your Slack, like
for the GitHub, for the Label Studio GitHub stars. 20K by my half birthday.
Right now, or not, I shouldn't say guys, it's not. But folks, let's go star. Yeah, let's go star the Label.
It's like a stretch goal that's like 6,500 people, but like whatever, like we can do it. If you ain't dreaming big, you ain't dreaming.
I'm gonna put it on the screen. Go ahead and star it right now. If a lot of folks were asking how can we contribute, that might be one of like the most low level but impactful ways. So go ahead and star it. Oh, I already have it starred. Cool. All right. We will. If Chris, did you have any last thing you wanted to say?
No. Just thanks for having us on, and yeah, like really had a great time.
Awesome. I had a great time too. All right, y'all. Have a great Friday. Really enjoyed this. Bye.